I played aggressively against the Queen's Gambit and got a really great position. I fumbled a little bit, but kept some advantage and ended up going into an endgame where I had the bishop and my opponent had the knight. This is round 2 of the Shenandoah Open. I'm the 6th seed of the tournament. My live rating is 2015, but it is 2026. Where this game is happening. That's the year, and my opponent is Jason Ordanowski. I think he's probably in his 40s, maybe late 30s. So he's a middle-aged gentleman, and he's my round 2 opponent. Yeah, I'm hoping to get another win since I'm playing someone about 250 points lower rated than me ish. He plays knight f3, which is not d4, but it quickly transposes into a d4 opening. He plays c4, playing the ready gambit. I don't think it's that good to take. I think it's good to push, but I don't really know what to do against it. I haven't really studied the theory, so I like to just play e6 and play a queen's gambit declined setup, and he plays d4, so now it is a queen's gambit declined. And we both develop our knights, and against this move order on move 4, I like to play a6, kind of a tricky move. The idea is, if bishop f4, which does in the game, I'm going to take on c4. And if e3 or e4, I'm playing b5. And I'm like, bro, I got a pawn. What are you going to do about it? Well, he plays a4, saying there is no b5. And if you play c6, it's really slow. And also there's tactics against my rook on a8. For example, c6, e3, b5. Black always has to be worried about some b takes, or a takes b5, c takes b5, knight takes b5, tactics. Black has to be very careful about that. There are some cases where this is a totally legit rook exchange sacrifice where white has an extra rook, but black's got the b's towards the king side, and it can actually be okay sometimes. In this specific case, it's not good because the bishop on f4, yeah, that would not be good. Then that would just be hanging. So, but sometimes but it can be good. In this case, it is not good at all. So that's the idea of a4, stopping any defense of the c4 pawn. But I actually have some experience in this. I think I've played some casual games against Bob Graham. He's a local Shippensburg player, and we have had some casual games that have gone this exact same opening, I think, where I go knight c6 with the idea that if e3, I'm gonna go knight a5. I'm defending my pawn, and actually, a knight on the rim is dim, a knight on the rim is grim, is slim, is thin. I don't know. But in this case, it's actually not easy to attack this knight. The queen, the bishop, they can't attack this knight on a5, and it's actually doing a good job defending the pawn on c4. So the most principled thing to do for white is to attack the pawn again, because it's impossible to defend this pawn, which makes a lot of sense. But now, here's the point. I'm going to go bishop b4, pinning the knight and x-raying the king. So after this knight moves, I pin the knight. And sure enough, he takes my pawn, and now the main idea is queen d5 here. Eyeing the g2 pawn and the rook on a1, attacking the knight on c4, and defending my knight on a5. So what are you going to do in this position? There are some nice ways to lose in this position. For example, if you just develop your bishop to e2 and claim, if you take my knight, I'm going to pin you and attack the bishop. So for example, if this knight moves, then the bishop's hanging. And if you take here, after pawn takes, actually, what am I talking about? This is just simply up a piece. Why did I think this was okay? Or not okay. Why did I think this was a tactic that didn't work? That's not even a tactic. That's just a free piece. I don't know what I'm smoking. Let me rewind. The point is queen d5. And after he takes my knight, I take his knight, and suddenly, hey, I have 2 attackers on your knight. And after you defend, I go knight d5. And I'm attacking your knight again, and I'm attacking the bishop. And there's nothing you can really do here. So he defends his knight again. I take his bishop. And I have this really nice move that wins the tempo, bishop d7. Because if you just develop a piece to prepare to castle, hello, that's a free pawn on a4. Very nice, attacking the queen. And there's not much you can really do about it, to be honest, other than play b3. So So everything's coming with tempo. I play queen d5 with tempo. I play queen takes a5 with tempo. I play knight d5 with tempo. I take his bishop. He has to respond. I attack his pawn. He has to respond. I attack. I put my bishop on this really nice diagonal. And how are you going to complete development? Are you really going to play f3 here? No, you're not. Because after castles, this pawn is simply hanging. And you just don't have enough moves to get what you want. And I don't even have to castle. I could probably play rook d8 as well. So that's a big issue. That's a big issue for white. So he plays a bishop c4, giving up the pawn on g2 with the idea of rook g1 and getting active. And I thought here, so the first round I thought for 44 minutes. This position I only thought for 34 minutes, and I came up with the wrong idea. My friend Victor, who's a national master, but now he floats in the mid to high 2000s, he was telling me that, like, how come I didn't go for bishop takes g2? Well, I was, I annotated this game, by the way. This is a no engine recap until the very end of this video, but I annotated it, so I marked this move as interesting. So the idea is after rook g1, black's not going to retreat to f3 or d5 or something like that. We want to play with initiative. So after bishop e4, the queen could take. Bishop takes c3 check. So I lose a piece, but I win the piece. And I could castle attacking d4. So if he takes, I take here, and my attack breaks through first before his. Okay, that makes sense. And Victor was asking me why I didn't do this. Like, because he said, black is clearly better. And to that, I wasn't so sure in the game. Yes, I'm attacking d4, but I thought he could just defend it. Like, let's say rook d1, and this light square bishop is pretty good. It's defending the king on all the light squares, and I thought this would be, and I wasn't really sure how to progress here. Now I realize that I do have the queen h5, check if he moves the c rook over, and I can win the pawn on h2, and I'm up 2 pawns, maybe just 1 if he takes my pawn next, but point is I should have more than enough compensation. I can also just play g6 first as well to solidify my position. So this, in hindsight, like, it does look appealing. Like, black is just up a pawn. However, what I calculated in the game was like, what if I just castle now? And after he castles, now I take the pawn on d4. But this gets really, really interesting because I don't have to take the pawn on d4. I can also take the knight and get into an endgame where we trade the queens. But then there's this really, really annoying move. Bishop takes a6. And so if I take, he takes, and suddenly this pawn's attacked. And if I go king b7, he doubles up. And I'm like, this is annoying. This is annoying. And in this case, I might have this check here, actually. I actually did not calculate that. I did not realize I had that check there. But, it's equal pawns. Black might be slightly better, but it's not that much to write home about. But, so if he takes this, my pawn on a6, well, I don't have to take back. I can also just go bishop takes g2. And now it gets interesting because, if he takes this pawn with check, well, I can always bring my bishop back. And if he takes my bishop, well, now I take his bishop. And I was like, now I'm up a pawn, and look at these awful pawns. And it's an endgame. Queens are off the board. But then I was just like, oh my gosh, rook fc1. And suddenly, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to play passive. I have to put my rook on d7. And let's say he just, goes king here. I go king here. He goes king here, or pawn there. I go here, so I can free up one rook. But then, if he just, defends, what am I doing? Actually, he doesn't have to offer to trade rooks. He can just, go back and forth here. And I couldn't find a way to try to make progress. I was like, this does seem appealing, but I don't know how to make progress here. So that's why I didn't play bishop takes c3 and queen takes c3 with the intention of going to this rook endgame, because there's some nasty bishop takes a6 tactics. And I was really annoyed by that because I thought I had such a great position. I thought this bishop was really good on a6 or on c6, but it's just missing that final touch. And what's really nasty is that if we go for this line where we trade, if bishop takes a6, and let's say I'm like, okay, what if I just ignore the threat? What if I just take this other pawn? Now I'm still a pawn, but then rook takes. It's like, ouch, ouch. The bishop pins the pawn, and he can just take my bishop, and now he gets the pawn back, and he actually has an outside passer, which is super annoying. So that's why I decided to just take on d4. And my idea was, so the reason why I did this, instead of taking on g2 when he played bishop c4, the reason why I went for this is because I know most likely he's going to move his knight back, either to e2 or a2. The main move I calculated was knight a2, with the idea that white wants to trade off the bishop pair, and they want to set up bishop takes a6 tactics to win the bishop on c6 and to win a pawn. So that's what I thought he was going to go for. And in this position, I have rook d2. And the only square the queen can go to, all these squares are covered. So the queen has to go queen b1. And it's kind of like a buffet. I could go bishop c3 here. Or I can just... Well, actually, bishop a3 might look the most appealing because of rook c2. Now I can double up. And if he doesn't play rook c2, rook d1, I can still double up. Or I can maybe even potentially... Well, yeah, I probably want to double up, actually. I want to double up. And this is a very pleasant position. That was my original idea. However, in the game went knight e2, and then I was like, wait, I could go rook d2 still, force his queen to b1. However, I mean, bishop e4 is even better. Because now, after queen a2 or queen g2, I can go rook d2 anyways, and now his queen is forced to a1. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm forcing his queen to a1, not b1, but a1, the very corner, and he can't do anything. And then he played queen b2, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid. If I go rook d2 now, getting active, well, now he takes a pawn on g7. And he's attacking my rook with tempo. And if I have to move my rook, then he takes this pawn. And now this pawn is hanging with check. And I'm like, wait a second. Where is my attack? Like, my rook looks nice on the second rank. And my other rook's on open file, which is nice. But, like, I just lost 2 pawns. This pawn is weak. Maybe this is okay for me. Because, yeah, in the future, maybe I can use this open g file. But right now, I can't. Is this really the right idea? Or is this just plain not good? Plain dumb. That's why after queen b2, I just went back. I'm like, you know what? Now I just go back, because if you take, I'm gonna go rook g8, and I'm gonna make you not have a good time. I mean, this is a classic windmill tactic where the bishop and rook work together. So after rook takes g2, the king only has 1 square. After the rook moves, the king only has 1 square. Check here. It's a windmill because the rook keeps coming back into place. And here it's actually going to be checkmate. So actually the windmill wasn't even necessary, but it was just cool just to do it anyways. Well, windmill wasn't necessary as in I didn't have to take the knight. Anyways, so he can't take on g2 or g7 now. What he could do, if he really wanted to win the pawn on g7, he could go f3. Kicking away my bishop. So let's say bishop d5, for example. Now queen takes g7. So now he won a pawn, and now I don't have any rook g8, rook takes g2 tactics. So maybe he could have gone for this if he really wanted to. But in any case, his dark squares are really weak. I'm not really sure how to exploit them, to be honest. Bishop d2 would be an interesting move to do here. Let's say rook d1, then I can snap it off. And either take this a4 pawn or play rook g8 at some point, or give a check first. Well, if I take here, well, I could do that. Yeah, so the world is my oyster, and oysters are good. So I thought this would be okay for me. If he did want to be greedy and play f3, it feels really wrong in the position to play f3. So after I move my rook back, he plays knight g3, saying, hey, I'm going to attack your bishop and now take on g7, because now your bishop is not on this long diagonal. And, you know, I don't want to play bishop c6 because, once again, there might be some bishop takes a6 tactics in the future. Right now, it looks like it doesn't work, so maybe I could play this move, but my queen is tied down. It doesn't work because my queen can take, and my pawn is still defending my bishop, but my queen is tied down to the defense of the a6 pawn, so if I remove my queen, then bishop takes a6 works. So I didn't really want to move it back to c6. I didn't really want to move it back to d5, although it might be okay. Well, if bishop takes and rook takes, then we're kind of in a similar situation as before, where my rook gets hit with tempo and I'm losing multiple pawns on the king side, lickety split. So maybe I could just take back with the queen and enjoy a very centralized position for myself. So queen takes, maybe rook here, and if takes, I don't know, maybe give up. Well, this one would actually threaten checkmate, which would not be good for me. So I ended up deciding to go bishop g6 because after he takes, my bishop on g6 actually guards all my pawns quite well on the light squares, and I can win the pawn back by playing bishop d2 and bishop takes f4. So now I'm still up a pawn, and now he thinks for a while and plays rook d4, which I think is just obliging to what I want, because it allows me to play queen e5, simply getting to an endgame. His queen has nowhere to go. He has to trade queen for queen. If I play bishop here, this bishop e5 is probably just fine. He would probably trade, and then play bishop h6, which is not very inspiring for white. However, I thought much more simple than that, which is play queen e5, force the trade, and then now I'm up a pawn. And I mean, look at my bishops pointing towards the queen side. Like, my bishops are really, really good, and I'm just up a pawn still, and there's nothing he can do. So that's what I thought. So he decides to play actively, which makes sense. He plays f4 with the idea that after the bishop moves, he can play f5. And his idea is that, hey, I'm getting into the position. I'm attacking your bishop. I can maybe attack your f pawn even more. I'm gonna win the pawn back, or try to win the bishop pair. And if you don't have the bishop pair, well, that's good. You know, you don't want your opponent to have the bishop pair in an open position like this with pawns on both sides of the board. So I go bishop c5 check and put my rook on the second rank. And it's a little bit tricky for him. He has to be careful here. For example, knight h6. Let's say I do like a nothing move and I just wait. If he takes, I can take. Well, actually, with knight h6, I can probably just go bishop d3 here, attacking the bishop, attacking the rook. And so if he takes, then I have back rank checkmates here. And then if he takes, then I can take and attack his pawn. So if he takes me, now I have back rank checkmate. So the fact that he's always down a tempo because of back rank issues is just really, really nice. Really, really nice indeed. I don't think this is leading anywhere. Well, it is leading somewhere in the sense that I do win. I do win this pawn, because if he blocks, then I can just chop, chop. Oh, I was trying to chop here, but that doesn't work. So this endgame might be winning, but it might not be. But anyways, he goes knight h4, making me do the move I wanted to do already, which was bishop d3 here, offering a trade, trying to get into a pleasant endgame. And he goes knight f3, attacking my rook. And so if I take his rook, then he'll take my rook, and if I take his bishop, if I take his bishop, then he'll take my bishop. and now his knight's on c4. So instead of that, I take his bishop, he takes my rook, and I take his rook, and now instead of his knight ending on the c4 square, his knight ends on the f1 square. And now it's about the converting process. I'm up a pawn, time to convert this pawn up, bishop versus knight endgame. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6 is activate the king. I want to target these pawns, and right now they're on light squares, so I have to use my king to attack them on the light squares. Meanwhile, white is going to try to target my pawns, and I'm going to use my bishop along with my pawns to stop the knight from coming in. I activate my king. He pushes a pawn to activate his king. I activate my king. He activates his king. I activate my king. He activates his king. I activate my king. He activates his knight. If I continue to attack his pawns, and now knight d4 check. He's attacking my bishop. I have to defend. Then he can either take my bishop, probably not a good idea, or he can play knight of 6. And it's like, hey, how are you defending my pawn on a7 here? Or even better, knight g5. This is a knight fork. I can't defend both my pawns. I'm going to be losing a pawn, and then he'll have a 2-on-1 no matter how you slice or dice it, and my losing chances or drawing chances go up like crazy. So after knight d2, I just play a nice prophylactic move, bishop e7. So now, if he goes knight d4, my bishop is 3 squares in front of the knight. So when a bishop is 3 squares in front of the knight, it controls the knight's movement very well. So he does go knight e4, and look, all of the knight's forward moves are covered by my bishop. There is nothing this knight can do to wreak havoc on my position. The only thing that knight can do is go knight d3, knight f5 to try to fork potentially, but it's too slow. I activate my king again, and I'm saying, hey, yeah, the knight and the pawn work together to build a wall, blocking my king out, but I don't care. King d3, I'm going around your wall, and it's not a wonder wall. So he pushes his pawn. So if I take, he has a couple options. One, probably the most prudent is just knight c5 check here, winning this pawn on b7. And so even though I lose my pawn, you can give a check. And more pawn trades happen. And this is just a draw. There's no way I'm winning this. So he wants to trade pawns. When you're up material, so I'm up a pawn, I want to trade pieces, not pawns. I would love a bishop and knight trade. So then, I'm simply up a pawn and there's less counterplay. So I don't fall for it. I don't take the pawn. I simply move my king again. And then he moves his pawn, I move my king again. And if I take his pawn with my bishop, then knight g5 here is a pawn fork. This endgame is probably winning, but I don't want to calculate. I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep moving my king over. He pushes his pawn. I push my pawn. My friend Nick asked me, how come I allowed him to split my pawns? Well, because I could just, take, and then go king b4. Well, now he could potentially go b6, and yeah, I could push my pawn or take here. But the fact is, the split pawns, well, this is a rook pawn, and a knight is trying to guard against it. So actually, having split pawns against a knight is not necessarily a bad thing. If it's a bishop, maybe that's a different story. But with the knight, it's a bit more clumsy in this endgame. He gives a check. I move my king. He attacks both my bishop and my knight and my pawn. So I just take his pawn finally on h4, and I push my pawn. I push my pawn. I push my pawn. I push my king because he gave me a check, and then I push my pawn. And the ending of this game, bishop g5, zugzwang. He can't move his king without losing his knight. He can't move his knight without me promoting to a queen. He can't move his pawn because my bishop blocks it. He is in zugzwang. He would rather pass the turn than make a move here. I was like, you ain't gonna take my pawn. You had the chance. Your chance is gone. Game over. And I won this game, and now I enter round 3 with 2 out of 2, and I play a 2300 in the 3rd round. So overall, I think my one blemish in this game, well, firstly, not going for the endgame here with bishop takes g2. Even though bishop takes g2 might be the better move, I like my decision-making thought process on not doing that move. So even though objectively speaking it might not be best, I thought my decision-making was good, and I'm interested to see what the engine thinks. Most likely Victor was right that bishop takes g2 is the best move. I'm not bothered by that. The only thing I'm really bothered by is playing bishop e4 in this position. An awful move. Rook d2, simply a lot better. Queen b1. And the reason why, because I was really annoyed by potential bishop takes a6 tactics. In this case, they don't work because my queen guards, but I was really annoyed by them in general. But I just needed to develop pieces and play good chess. But instead of that, I decided to not do that and play bad chess. So other than that, I thought I played a pretty good game. And with that being said, I'm going to hit the game review, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.